won't hear this on the radio.
We have heard that 500,000 children have died. Is the price worth it? The price, we think the price is worth it.
Listen, I really think the media is...
Because they own this fucking place. It's a big club, and you ain't in it. You and I are not in the big club.
Could you look me in my eyes and just lie to me?
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
They burn these fucking people alive because the message they want to convey to you is state power will always win.
You're listening to Below the Tension Podcast.
Open up your eyes, 'cause maybe it's our lies. I'm trying to make them break.
What's up, everyone? Thank you for joining me on a new episode of Below the Tension. I was on vacation last week, so I did not do a Saturday and a Wednesday show, but I have a brand new show lined up for you today. Thank you guys for being patient with me on that. Below the Tension is a news and politics podcast. I tried to pick out news articles that didn't make the front page of the paper or the top headline on a website, or you probably did not see on network news. I try to fill 90% of the show with content like that. Below the Tension is syndicated by voicesofliberty.com, and it's also syndicated by the Sovereignty Network, a community of journalists and content creators reporting the revolution of the mind. You can find my personal page on their website, sovereigntynetwork.com/below the tension. And this show is also syndicated by TimeToFree.us, a community of anarchists. Comment on this podcast, visit their website, or tweet them at TimeToFreeUs to learn how to join their community. I am also on YouTube, Below the Tension, Facebook, Below the Tension. You can tweet me at Slav Libertarian, or I am on iTunes. Subscribe to me on iTunes, Below the Tension. Now, to get to the top story, the one that everyone knows about, is Teflon Hillary. She has, in 1 week, weaseled out of both of her biggest scandals. Benghazi, big report, but at the end of the day, she didn't do anything wrong. Same with the emails. Big long report, big speech by Director Comey, but at the end of the day, no charges. Now, the Benghazi thing, I can kind of see it was boneheaded. They didn't do the right things, but I don't see anything criminal about that. I agree. However, this email thing really has got me twisted because, as any of you know that have listened to my show before, I have handled classified information. I was a member of the military with access to classified information. I've handled it. I've stored it. I've been around it. And I can say, without a doubt, that if I had done, or anyone else that I work with, or anyone that I know has had any type of training on this, if any of us, if anyone other than Hillary had done what she did, we would at the very least have our security clearances pulled and be fired from our jobs. Or if you're in the military, you probably get an Article 15, which is the highest punishment you can get without being court-martialed. It's a big deal. To put this in perspective, if you put a thumb drive into a non-secured computer, just a regular government terminal, not secured at all, not secret, no classified information on it whatsoever. If you just put a thumb drive into a non-secured computer, it automatically locks it, and an investigation starts. And depending on the circumstances, you'll probably lose access to government computers, maybe indefinitely, depending on what happened in the circumstances. So that's just the minimum. If you accidentally put a thumb drive into a computer, a non-secure computer. Hillary didn't just make a mistake, did not understand the policy. She knew what she was supposed to be doing. She was warned dozens of times. She knew exactly what had to happen, and she took real, tangible steps to circumvent these policies and procedures. If I had my own server in my house that I transferred even unclassified stuff from work to my house and stored it at my house, at my personal computer or server, I would be nailed to the wall. I would be pulled upside down by my toes and hung there, figuratively speaking. So the fact that this person, I don't care who it is a serious contender for the president of the United States is mind-blowing. Absolutely mind-blowing. I mean, doing it to get some pussy like Petraeus did, that's a better reason than I just didn't want to follow the rules, so I made my own server. It's absolutely insane. And the internet is not taking it very well, and rightly so. That's all I have to say about that. If it was me or anyone else, we'd be, at the very least, fired and our security clearances pulled forever. At the very least. Now, moving on to some other articles. I have TSA news. I have a lot of tech news today, which makes me happy. The government can robocall you, but corporations can't. That's great. The Arctic hole in the ozone is healing. Some solar news with a little bit of economics in there. Some Venezuela updates. John McCain updates. And a little bit of news that you heard about the Iraq-Britain report being released, but I don't think you've heard this perspective on it. So I'm going to get to that all in this half hour. Disabled teen cancer patient slammed to the ground by TSA. Who will abuse disabled cancer patients without the government? How will the airports be secure and slam mentally disabled people if you don't have TSA while they're standing around and you have 3-hour lines? A disabled teenager cancer patient was injured by TSA agents in a violent arrest at Memphis International Airport. Hannah Cohen, 18, partially blind, deaf, and paralyzed by a brain tumor, you're hearing that right, was allegedly thrown to the ground, hitting her head, then arrested by TSA and airport police after setting off metal detectors in an airport last year. Hannah and her mother Shirley were returning home, get this, from cancer treatment for her tumor at St. Jude's Children's Hospital. You know the sad commercials on TV? Yeah, the TSA slammed one of those patients into the ground. Imagine that commercial, like, oh, da, so sad, give money. Well, bam! Slammed, kid. You ain't going nowhere. They wanted to do further scanning, but she was reluctant. She didn't understand what they wanted to do, Shirley Cohen said, the mother, who tried to explain to the TSA agent why her daughter was acting this way, but she was kept away. She said then her daughter started to panic. She was trying to get away from them, but the next instant, one of them had her down on the ground and hit her head on the floor, and there was blood everywhere. Shirley Cohen, who at the time was hobbled herself by a broken foot. This is classic pathological behavior of psychopaths. You know, these TSA agents are caught all the time stealing things, feeling up kids, picking pretty vulnerable women out of line for extra security. I bet you they saw this cancer patient, disabled person and her mother with a broken foot on crutches, and it was a fucking feeding frenzy. Oh yeah, look at these weak people. Oh, just swarm all over them, slam her to the ground as she freaks out. Obviously, doesn't know what's going on. All she wants is her mom. Like that homeless person that the police killed, screaming, "Dad, Dad, Dad, help me," over and over again. Schizophrenic, suffocated him to death. What is it with people in these positions that they just get this craze about them when they see really weak people? Makes me sick. So on to some foreign policy news, and this has to do with the report that Britain put out about the involvement in the Iraq War. Iraqi who famously hammered Saddam's statue says Blair should be put on trial. The Iraqi man who was filmed attacking Saddam Hussein's statue with a sledgehammer said Iraq was, get this, better shape under his rule, Saddam's rule, and George Bush and Tony Blair should be put on trial for ruining it. British former civil servant John Kilholt released a long-awaited report criticizing Britain's role in the U.S.-led invasion and occupation of Iraq. The report said that policy on Iraq was made based on flawed intelligence and assessments, and that the claims that Iraq posed a threat by possessing weapons of mass destruction were presented with unjustified certainty. It was in that turmoil unleashed that Iraq has come to be what it is. He continues, I regret striking that statue. I wish Saddam would return. He executed, get this, I wish Saddam would return. This is the guy, the Iraqi, speaking. Quote, I wish Saddam would return. He executed many of my family, but he is still better than the politicians and clerics who Iraq have today. Incredible. This guy would rather have a dictator that executed many of his own family members than what he has today. He continues, Blair and Bush must be put on trial as they have ruined Iraq with their lies. And it turns out there were no weapons of mass destruction. Incredible. Moving on to more foreign policy news. Senator John McCain visits Pakistan's North Waziristan and praises their anti-terrorist efforts. Remember the last time John McCain visited somewhere in the Middle East area? Senator John McCain led a rare congressional delegation. It was rare to visit Syrian rebels, too. Unprecedented. To Pakistan and Afghanistan, visiting Pakistan's uneasy North Waziristan region Sunday. The area was formerly regarded as a terrorist hideout and staging areas for attacks in Afghanistan, but has since largely been cleared of insurgents. For now, keep an eye on that. Destruction follows that demon. Venezuela update, and this is just fabulous. Maduro says everything's okay now. Venezuela ending electricity rationing as dam has recovered. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro said on Monday, nationwide electricity rationing has ended as the drought-stricken Guri hydroelectric dam has recovered. Venezuela was 6 days from collapse when we were faced with having to turn off most of the country before the rationing, said Maduro. So he saved everybody and everything is okay now. Rationing's good, what Bernie would say. Without the rationing of the power, they would have none. Which is true, but they shouldn't have had to ration it in the first place. But that's what you get with a centrally planned socialist economy, who has the largest oil reserves in the world, but has no gas plants that it could have supplemented. You know, the market, a free market, maybe? No. White House tally of civilian drone deaths raises hard questions. Watchdog groups are criticizing recently released numbers on the number of people killed by American drone strikes outside of war zones. An unprecedented report released Friday reveals the Obama administration killed more than 2,300 so-called enemy combatants, but critics say the report significantly undercounts the number of non-combatant deaths. The Obama administration says it killed 64 to 116 civilians, but critics say they aren't transparent enough and now lack the precision in those numbers getting scrutiny. Even the highest U.S. government estimates are significantly lower than the death totals compiled by watchdog groups. One estimates a maximum of 801 civilians actually died from drone strikes outside of war zones. Wonder what the count will be from inside of a war zone, if it's anywhere from 64 to 801. But the government, you know, if it was kind of one way or the other, put it into the combatant file. We don't want to make people upset. 2 Dutch soldiers killed in Mali peacekeeping accident. Now I've said it many, many times in the show. Watch Africa. You have these Niger Delta Avengers running around now. If you don't know who they are, look them up. They're blowing up pipelines in Nigeria. Oil pipelines. 2 Dutch soldiers were killed and another seriously injured during a training exercise in Mali on Wednesday. The latest casualties in a mission that has become the most deadly place for United Nations peacekeepers to serve. More than 11,000 soldiers are serving in the Mali mission, which aims to support the Bamako government in its fight against Islamist militants in northern Mali, who have staged assaults on the capital as well as Burkina Faso and the Ivory Coast. And now Niger and Nigeria with the Niger Delta Avengers. It seems like there's just terrorists all over that part of Africa. And then you got Boko Haram on the other side. Whatever should the U.S. do? On to some tech news. Big Solar is leaving rooftop systems in the dust. Now, I want you to note the government incentive versus a free market economy model here. Solar power is on pace for the first time this year of how many years they've been subsidized. Note that. To contribute more electricity to the grid than will any other form of energy, a feat driven by economics rather than green mandates. What? The cost of electricity from large-scale solar installations is now comparable to, and sometimes cheaper, than natural gas-fired power, even without incentives aimed by mandates. Buoyed by appeals to self-reliance and environmental stewardship, as well as government subsidies, the early solar industry was dominated by rooftop panels that powered individual homes and businesses. But such small-scale installations are expensive, require hefty incentives to make them attractive to homeowners. Today, large systems that sell electricity to utilities dominate. They are expected to account for more than 70% of new solar added to the grid every year, according to industry research firm GTM. Gee, if the government had just gotten out of the way and let the free market take control of solar, imagine where we would be today. We could have a limitless power society by now. The success of large-scale solar has raised questions about the wisdom of continuing incentives for rooftop installations. Which remain far more expensive than most other forms of electricity. Get out of the way. You don't know shit, government. First signs of Antarctic ozone hole is healing. An MIT-led team of researchers has pinpointed what they call the first fingerprints of healing of the Antarctic ozone layer. They report that the ozone hole, which occurs each September to October in the Antarctic spring, has shrunk more than 4 million square kilometers since 2000. Quote, "We can now be confident that the things we've done have put the planet back on the path to healing," lead author Susan Solomon said. Which is pretty great for us, isn't it? Aren't we amazing humans that we did something that created a situation that we decided collectively as a world, let's get rid of these molecules, CFCs. We got rid of them, and now we're seeing the planet respond. And I agree. When humans aren't being collectively idiots, we are collectively pretty awesome. Why companies can't spam you with robocalls, but the government can. Oh. Be ready. Your phone might soon start ringing with more than a few unsolicited robocalls. Government employees and any contractors working on their behalf are now officially exempt from regulations on robocalls designed to protect consumers from annoying phone spam. They don't really care about protecting you from phone spam. They just want to be the other ones to do it. The clarification comes as the FCC regulators ruled that the regulations apply to only persons, and persons legally means an individual, partnership, association, joint stock company, trust, or corporation, and the government is none of those. The implication of this decision could be far-reaching. It validates the ability for federal agencies to perform surveys and polls on the effectiveness of their programs, such as Obamacare. It also affirms the ability of contractors to make robocalls to inform people of their Social Security benefits. But at the same time, they could also lead to unsolicited calls from debt collectors and student loan companies. The industry and the Department of Education, they argue that these calls could help prevent somebody from falling behind on their loan payments, though. I mean, it's for your own good that your phone's being spammed. And our last article of the day, which is pretty fucking cool. World's largest purifier cleans air and then turns the pollution into jewelry. Now, go look at this article yourself so you can see the tower and see the jewelry. It's pretty fucking cool. A designer created the largest air purifier in history, which could be used to clear the air of some of the most polluted cities around the world. A trial is set to start in Beijing, China, this September. In addition to removing pollutants from the air that could otherwise find its way into human lungs or blood, the city air purifier also turns smog into jewelry. The smog-free tower uses just 1,400 watts of electricity per hour, as much as a tea kettle, to clear some 30,000 cubic meters of air. The tower uses ion technology to capture small pollution particles at 2.5 million parts per million to 10 million parts per million and to release clean air. The surrounding area is 75% cleaner after the smog-free tower processed the air. The smog is then compressed into diamond-like jewelry, which is a byproduct of the process. Compressed smog particles are sealed in a resin cube after being put under pressure for 30 minutes. The resulting objects can be used in jewelry such as rings and cufflinks, which are already being sold. And I'm looking at the ring right now, and it looks pretty cool. Thank you guys for joining me. I hope that you heard some news that you did not hear anywhere. Find me on YouTube below the tension, iTunes below the tension, Facebook below the tension, and you can tweet me directly, and I will answer you even if you say I suck, at Slav Libertarian on Twitter. Thank you for joining me, and have a nice day.